Today is December 23rd, 2020. My name is Ann Shi. I'm with the Houston Asian American Archive, and we have invited back Shari Zheng to speak to us again about her stories, and this time on her contribution and interaction with the Houston's arts and culture scene. Thank you so much, Shari, for speaking with us.
Happy to be here.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And hope you have a happy holiday season with all of
Yes, thank you. You too. It's kind of a crazy year for all of us,
indeed.
especially in the arts, I think. It's just, I mean, even though things are not being presented to the public live, most of these organizations are probably working twice as hard to not put on a performance, just all the behind the scenes work of keeping these organizations going and keeping the artists and musicians paid. It's a lot of people have um, no income right now, or limited, definitely reduced income for a lot of artists and musicians. So it's a tough time, but I think organizations are doing really well, you know, and the patrons are still here to support organizations from small, medium to large, which that's a good thing about Houston. We have so many layers. We have the small, medium, and large, and they work together. I think it's a good community.
Yeah, definitely. And also, I'm feeling so grateful that creativity is keeping many of us sane during this very difficult
Nothing can stop
time.
an artist from creating. I think if you have that creative impulse in you, it's just you can't suppress it. People are going to make art no matter what.
Absolutely. And to start, I guess, on this interview regarding arts and culture in Houston, could you tell us a little bit about how you entered the culture scene? And as we know, you've been contributing as a writer, and critic, as an performer, and an organizer for art events yourself. Um,
Mhm.
yeah, like how did you start this journey?
Well, it was very serendipitous, I guess. It was, I think maybe in 2017, or whenever it was that Houston Grand Opera uh, produced Nixon in China for its 30th anniversary performance. Actually, they were the ones that debuted the opera 30 years ago, from I guess from 2017. So it was the first time in 30 years. It was a historic event when it happened, and um, it was it's a wonderful opera by John Adams, and the music is very difficult, and it's of course the subject matter is based on the history of President Nixon's first visit, uh, the opening of China to the United States after a long time of no diplomatic relationship. So I was very interested in seeing that opera live because I had never in my lifetime seen it. And um, I went and loved the production in every way. And then a friend of mine saw a review of the opera by the Chronicle theater um, critic Wei Huan Chen, and his review, and I think there were two articles he wrote about it, both of which really kind of focused on the issue of yellow face representation, identity politics, all valid issues for our times. But I found it not, I don't know, I felt like it was a personal thing for him, and that he didn't really take into account the history of the opera and the historic event itself, and the different perspectives that you could bring into that. So I felt like it was not a well thought out or well researched, even though his personal feelings are valid. I just felt like it was an unfair characterization of the production. So a friend of mine asked what I thought of it, and I immediately thought, wow, I felt pretty strongly about this, that I need to write something in defense of the production. which I did, and it became a Chronicle editorial, um, and it opened. There was a discussion of this topic at the Asia Society. There was a panel discussion about in the future how to. I mean, I think both sides had its point. You know, in the end, the Houston Grand Opera um, took the representation issue seriously, and the just being more aware, I guess. And times change. You know, our our standards of political discourse, you know, evolves over time as well. You know, certain words that were okay at one point are not okay now. You know, so as we progress, and we need to keep talking about it. So I think in the end, it was a good thing that there was a debate, and that his review and my perspective on it both were heard, and that the Houston Grand Opera started a cultural advisory committee, and we were able to discuss issues like this before it happened, before something went into production, so that you are engaging the community and such, you know, such matters. So yeah, that's how I started it. And after that came out, the editor of Arts and Culture Texas magazine approached me and asked me if I was interested in writing about the Houston arts and culture, and especially the music scene, because I'm a musician myself. And that's how I began my journey into arts writing.
That's wonderful. Thank you. And I guess since we've already started the conversation regarding Nixon in China, I'd love to dig a little bit more about it. And um,
Okay.
I also remember in June, you went to the Black Lives Matter, the
I
protest.
did.
Yeah,
Yes.
that was really interesting. So, like all these conversations we've been engaging since the death of George Floyd about racial segregation, and like everyone has been so invested in like trying to trace back our history in this unique time, and do you think if the HGO was to do it again, like in and after, yeah, like the kind of debate and the panels about this cultural advisory committees,
Mhm.
like what do you think they would do if they were to do it over again? Would they do to do it differently?
Well, well, I think before for opera, this art form is very old, and it's very, you know, Eurocentric, and not necessarily a diverse. Um, I think the HGO's work on in this area has really shown in the HGO Co, their education and community engagement branch, and they have commissioned many operas, smaller scale chamber operas, and things like that, that have engaged diverse communities in Houston. But you know, the classics are going to be the classics, and you will always have La Traviata and La Boheme, and all of those great masterworks. Um, and I mean, with those, you don't run into as much the cultural sensitive, you know, culturally sensitive debates. But for instance, they put on Pearl Fishers a year ago or a year or so ago, and I remember discussing about the costuming and the dancing, because it is in an exotic location, which is current day Sri Lanka, you know. So I think they had a Sri Lankan dancer that came and consulted with them, and they were especially aware of the costume not being so stereotyped. It was a beautiful production, full of colors, and but they did do the work beforehand to prepare audiences and have that discussion. So I think the same thing, if they were to do something that like Nixon in China, there would be many essays written about the historical context that is in their magazine that people can read about the historical context, so that when they see, if they decide to use um, portray an Asian character in a certain way that seems negative, maybe in the historical context, it was negative. You know, it was meant to be portrayed that way. So that people have an understanding of that before they go into it. So I think it's more the prep work that you do, that you know, when you educate the audience, not in a condescending way, but just giving them a larger historical context for the storyline and for why certain production choices were made. And as far as representation, I mean, there are enough Asian American voices, operatic voices out there to cast more Asian American singers, for instance. I mean, they did have one for that production that I went to, for a major character. And, you know, he's been known, but, you know, so few people are capable of doing those roles. So that is a very difficult thing for them to accomplish. And especially with opera, you have to go 5 years out to engage an artist. So, you know, just letting the audience recognize too the challenges of all of that, and still keeping in mind the, you know, I think the HGO is quite progressive, and they really are trying very much to be with the times, and even ahead of the times, to be really a leader in this area.
Yeah,
I don't know
definitely.
if that answered your question, but
Yeah, very much so. And
okay.
thank you. Yeah, and I also I'm aware that you're also very active in the other organization as well. Like you wrote about Musica, the camera.
Yeah, I have written, let's see, I've written quite a few articles on ROCO, on Apollo Chamber Players, on Musica, Houston Chamber Choir, the Camera, especially. And I mean, these are organizations that I really believe in. You know, they're dear to my heart. It's a um, I don't think of it as a conflict of interest necessarily. I am an advocate of the Houston music and arts scene. I do truly believe in all these organizations' different missions, and I think it's wonderful that we have, you know, Apollo Chamber Players is a very small group. You know, it's just a quartet basically at its core, but they have engaged the Vietnamese community and the Indian community. I mean, each season, each program, they, you know, they really get into every culture that lives in Houston. They're interested in how to bring that into their classical music world, into, you know, with their small ensemble. They've, you know, their 20 by 2020, which just finished over this pandemic year. They had to do that online, but you know, that was 20 commissions within the last, you know, less than 10 years, I think, that they've commissioned all of those new works, each representing a different country or a different culture. And, you know, they bring new audiences in, and they've really succeeded in their mission with that project. So I was really on board for, you know, advocating for them on that issue. I think the very first article I wrote for Arts and Culture was covering their recording trip to Cuba, which was another amazing thing because Cuba had just opened up at that time for travel for just, you know, normal people. Well, in fact, there was a period I think Trump banned the travel, so that came after that. Anyway, and then in ROCO too it's their mission is a lot of commissioning of new works. They're really into the living composers and just making connection with the audience, which they're very good at doing. Right now, they have something along the Buffalo Bayou. I don't know if you've seen it when you've taken walks there, but there are stations along the trail that you can, you know, hold your phone over the code, and the music that goes with that spot pops up, and you can have a nice jog with ROCO as your soundtrack. So, so I mean, a lot of creative, innovative ways of engaging with audience are happening. you know, even during this time, especially during this time, because they have to find new ways to stay relevant and stay in the community. Yes, and the camera, of course, they're all online too. And what I like about the camera is their, especially their young artist program, and they really train these amazing performers to not only perform but to educate, to go out into the schools and, you know, be able to relate and introduce music in a really vibrant and age appropriate way to different diverse groups of people in the community. So I think they've engaged in also and just different various things that they've been doing. And even the prison community, they went to youth detention centers. I especially enjoyed working on that project with the Decameron Young Artists. I think it was like a 6 week, at least maybe even more, an 8 week residency at a youth detention facility in Harris County out near NASA, actually. And they would go out there every Friday morning at 8 a.m. with these girls that are from, you know, troubled, having, you know, their troubled teens basically, and with their drug problems or whatever, you know, sex trafficking, whatever their victims or their perpetrators, but they, you know, they're in this facility and they were able to write their own story and present it as an opera. And that was very empowering to watch these girls be able to do that and how proud they were of themselves doing that. So yeah, those are some of the things I've been writing about and covering that I really feel strongly about. And then there's recently, my most recent article was on the Houston Chamber Choir's digital season. And I think that's an amazing story too, because singing has been one of those things that is especially hard to do in pandemic times, because early on they were identified as super spreaders, you know, choirs. So be able to, how do you find a way to sing together again? You know, and singing is one of the most natural forms of artistic expression. Even if you're not a professional musician, you can start singing a song, you know. So I think, and you know, like this holiday time, people sing together in congregation, in churches, in you know, the Messiah is put on. There's this, we miss that human connection of just our voices joining together. So I especially enjoyed covering that story as well and how they've been able to do that safely.
Yeah, amazing to hear that you're so well versed into like all aspects of Houston like music scenes and culture scenes. And I noticed that you're frequent visitors of probably not super frequent now, but like in the art scene as well, like the MFA.
Yes, I love the visual arts, and I am starting to expand in that area as well. I mean, there's always a lot to learn when you write about something. You want to be knowledgeable in it, and I'm not a polymath. You know, I started off just being a classically trained musician, but I am interested in everything. Let's just say, I think when you are um, when you open yourself to more and more, the more you open yourself to, the more curiosity, the more interest, and it's one thing leads to another. Is my mind is always going in tangents. Like I'm interested in this. As soon as I start reading about this subject, something else pops up, and I'm immediately jumping to research on that. So I'm just always trying to broaden, I guess, my knowledge base and my um, engagement in the arts world. So yeah, my next story is actually a visual arts story. So that will be fun to do. And yes, I love the new Kinder building at the MFAH, and the Menil has been putting on amazing exhibitions as well. And of course, they just opened the Drawing Institute, you know, about 6 months ago, I think, and that's been a great addition as well. So yes, and the art galleries. I was gonna. There's one gallery that I'm very fond of. It's one of those. It's not a gallery where you feel like you have to where everything is super expensive and you need to be a collector to be in there. This is Archway Gallery on Westheimer, near Common Bond, actually. Um, it's a collective of over 30 artists, and they share the space and they exhibit their works. And there's always a special exhibition, and they often host concerts. Um, I think, well, your friend Mark has played there before, and a different quartet, Kinetic Ensemble, Loop 38. All these small ensembles, they've all used the space. And one of the co-owners is John Slaby, and he's an amateur pianist himself. And he has been organizing, because this year, just this month, is Beethoven's 250th anniversary. So Adam Golka, this great pianist from Houston, he is playing all 32 Beethoven sonatas this month at the Archway. So just really, really amazing.
Yeah, definitely. Like all the culture in terms of either it's visual or sound, yeah, arts are kind of coming together and like collaborate.
Right.
That's really
Yes.
amazing. And actually, also going back to a little bit about, I guess your story, since you studied in Oklahoma
Yes.
and coming to Houston, like what are some of the surprises that you experienced, or what do you find unique about the Houston arts and culture scene?
Wow, I have had so many artists and musicians tell me that they would not be able to do what they do anywhere else. I mean, that may be an exaggeration, but I really do think Houston is special. The combination of it's a big city that feels like a small town. It's not cutthroat. It's not it's competitive in a way that it's beneficial to everyone, rather than it's all inclusive. It's a very inclusive environment. I mean, the dancers in the Houston Ballet have worked with some of these small music ensembles. All you have to do is reach out to a person. All you have to do is know somebody and build a bridge, and collaborations just happen. And from very, very avant-garde kind of artist to individual artist. An individual could go out there and meet a videographer that then they end up making a movie together, a music video. Or all you have to do is ask, this is what I need, who is out there willing to collaborate with me? And things tend to happen that way. And I think that's a very special thing about Houston. And I think it's continuingly to happen. It's you tend to meet people who are not just in the, not just in the music. It's not narrow. It's what I'm trying to say. There's another new group that I'm really proud of that has just sprung up in the last couple of months, the Monarch Chamber Players. For instance, they've been taking their 5-person Nutcracker show on the road, because the ballet is not putting on the Nutcracker this year live, right? They've made a video. But this little group has been going to people's private homes, socially distanced outside in the yard. And they have a classic film of the Nutcracker in the background, and they are a wind quintet, and they play the entire show with their own cadenzas and arrangement, and it's a hit. People are showing up to these events, and they're traveling not just within Houston, but even to Clear Lake or Woodlands. They've been kind of out and about in the greater metropolitan area. So, and it's just popped up. It's just like somebody had the initiative, say, oh, we don't have any work, and let's just make something happen. And they did. So that's that kind of entrepreneurial spirit that I think is especially prevalent in our city. And I'm just so proud to be a person that sometimes is a bridge for that. Because I don't really do a whole lot of performing myself anymore. And I mean, I still, make some videos and put my things out there, but for me, it's rewarding to see the younger people doing that, to try to be the person who introduce them to the right people to make all of that happen and to advocate for them. So I feel like that's more and more my role, and I'm happy to do it.
Yeah, thank you so much for being the bridge and mediator to help, yeah, musicians and artists to get out there. And can you speak a little bit about the audience? Like, how has your interaction with the audience been?
Well, aside from, I've been to quite a few Houston Symphony events, which have a growing. Well, they first they started off just inviting the major donors back, and then maybe 75 people in the audience, and then increasing to 150, and eventually now I think they're allowing us as many as 500 to be back in Jones Hall. But so far they haven't had numbers that big, but maybe 300 tops. But I've been to a few live events in the venue, and that has been really nice, to get to go to a live performance. Um, Other live performances I've been to have been mostly outside. I went to an Apollo Chamber player event and a Loop 38 event. And I went to an Aurora Picture Show event where they showed surreal shorts on the Menil main building. And that was amazing. A lot of people showed up and brought their blankets and their picnics, and it was just a fun event for the community. That's another thing, the theater community, they've been, trying to think out of the box and trying to keep going as well. And that's been hard. The theater community has been hit pretty hard. And of course, the Alley is giving their Christmas Carol as a free gift to the city. But Catastrophic Theater, one of the actors involved, Greg Dean, he kind of used this time to make his dream happen, which is making a movie. And it's a short movie. It's 15 minutes, but it's like a combination of Laurel and Hardy and I don't know. It's really cool. It's called Herzstück, and it's about a violinist and a pianist, but things fall apart and hearts are literally broken. But anyway, I mean, just I've been seeing all these different events. Asia Society too has put on some amazing shows, like the Ancient Bronze from I think it's from the Minnesota Arts Institute. It's the Pillsbury collection, but that's one of the best bronze exhibit I've seen anywhere. Just top quality artifacts and collection basically. And that was here for a while, and I think it just left last month. And now they're hosting in the same exhibit rooms, they're hosting local artists, Asian American artists who are if you go visit, they're basically working there, and you get to see them at work and see their whole process and their craft. So that's pretty amazing. I think I got sidetracked by this question. I probably went a different way. What was the original question?
Yeah, I was wondering about your interaction with the audience. Like,
oh, my audience, right. Yes. Okay. Well, I guess people have told me that not only it's not really just the events themselves that they miss. This is so true. It's the community of, you see the same people at the same shows. These are your diehard fans of all of these different groups. So when you don't get to go to these live events anymore, you miss the interaction between, they may not be your everyday friends, but they may be just the friends that you go to this theater with, or friends that you go to the Houston Symphony with, or friends that you go to, or any groups, like little groupies. So we all have our community of people that we share these experiences with. And without the live event, you kind of lose touch. So a lot of people have told me that that's what they miss. Not only the art itself, the music itself, but the community of the audience, of sitting in the next row and just waving and saying hello and catching up. It's a very social aspect of going to these events and sharing in this amazing art together, and being taken out of your daily life, and to have the special moments like that. So I mean, I think that's, to a certain extent, when you get on a chat room and you're listening to a uh, event online over Zoom or over YouTube Live, I know sometimes in the middle of listening, I will just text a line to a friend that I see also that is in the audience, and we have a little chat about, this sounds awesome, and I love this piece, or like, great that you're here. But it would be this, I guess it would be the same, except it's not in person. You can't, you know, go have a drink after or anything like that. But it's still a shared experience. It's I would much rather have the live experience, but it's been okay. There's ways to engage online as well. So, and I think the younger generation is much more likely to be comfortable and okay with the online presence. So I guess I'm more old school. I still prefer to engage socially live. So, but it's better than nothing, those little chat rooms. So
Yeah, we all miss like the vibrant of the music in the air for sure.
yeah. But one good thing is that with everything being online now, you can access not just Houston's arts events, but the best of the whole world. You can listen to the London Symphony online. You can listen, you can do whatever it is that you're interested in. And a lot of great artists all around the country are giving master classes. And, I think people are opening up their practice once they open it on the internet, is really for anybody. It's not just for local people, so that you can share it with your family and friends that live in different parts of the world. And that is the one good thing about the opening this up online. And I think that's not going to go away. I think for all the organizations, that's now going to be a definite, this is here to stay kind of thing, even when live performances come back. And that's just in addition to, it's never a bad thing. you know I don't think it takes away from what we have here at home.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I'm also wondering, as since we are interviewing as an Asian American archive, like with you being Asian American, like how has this the identity, I guess, part of um, like contributed to the art scene or helped you navigate the art scene in a unique perspective? Like what
Mm.
is special?
Well, I mean, I personally, I guess I've never really approached this as from a Asian American or a Chinese American perspective. But of course, when there is an Asian American artist or musician, I tend to pay particular attention to it, and I'm proud of that heritage and what they bring to their practice. So when there is an Asian American that is successful or in what they do and creative, and that is a sense of empowerment for the community. So I guess that is I'm always looking for um, someone from my homeland that is doing something unique and amazing, and I want to know about it and want to know how they come to it, how they came to it. And because it definitely affects the way you make art, I think, where your roots are, and of course you're influenced by all of the things that go into that. I mean, that's why kind of I go to the Asia Society. I keep up with most of their exhibits, because they have curated from that community, basically, locally and internationally, and I always enjoy what they have to offer, and from that perspective. So I depend on organizations with those specific missions to bring me that aspect. But I mean, I'm not really seeking it out myself necessarily. I tend to appreciate all cultures and all forms and the diversity of our entire city as a whole. So I'm not really focused so much on that particular aspect.
Yeah, I totally understand.
Yeah.
Music, it can be so many things, and it can root it from everywhere and travel everywhere. Like it's
Exactly. Especially, I mean, classical music, there's so many Asian Americans who are performers, who are such dedicated and gifted performers of their instruments. And, um, it's, I think Asian Americans are a pretty dominant force now in that industry, especially the orchestral music industry. You look in any major orchestra, you're going to see a lot of Asian American faces. So, it's that part of representation it's important, but I think what's more important is just fostering the audience and the community to appreciate the art form itself. You know, yeah. I mean, I don't think it matters as much how many people are Asian American who plays in an orchestra here, there, and everywhere. I mean, it's some as a Asian parent, I guess most of us make our children take a musical instrument, as their part of their upbringing, and I think that's all good and well, and um, there's nothing wrong with that. But I don't think we should limit ourselves to any particular field, really. I think to me, you just let your children develop these interests and you expose them to things. And like my kids, they didn't take to music, so they're playing tennis. It's just whatever their interests, wherever it lies. I would like to see more representation in all fields, not just that we're not known as just doctors or musicians or anything, and anything anybody else can do, we can do. you know it's there's no limit.
yeah, absolutely. And I guess I'm also curious, what are some of the artworks or an artist that
Mhm.
you find that particularly tackle this issue? I mean, this topic on Asian American identity, while not overdoing it. And
Okay, well, there's an Austin artist that I love. um I'm trying to look up her name for you. I think it's Bay Lee.
if you do,
Bailey Liu, yeah, I love her work, and you can definitely see the Asian influence in her work. But she does a lot of installation art. It's just really amazing. I mean, she was one of the artists represented at the Asia Society in an exhibit that they had last year. I remember seeing her large scale works, and I follow her on Instagram, and I love seeing her process, and she shows the process. And she's the mother of a little girl, and sometimes they do art together, and they get all covered in whatever material she's using at the moment. But yes, she's one of those artists that I really appreciate. And of course, the big names, Ai Weiwei. Um, the new museum, the new Kinder building has his dragon that's kind of like inspired by the way you build a kite, with the bamboo ribbing and the rice paper over it. That's hanging right over that tunnel, with the light installation by Olafur Eliasson. Um, it looks wonderful. And Ai Weiwei, of course, is a very political figure. His art is definitely making a very overt political statement. Um, and he's very outspoken artist too. So I've always been a fan of his. Um, there's not that much, actually, the MFAH is, there's not a whole lot of Asian representation there, I have to say, in the modern art. And perhaps they'll dig into that a little bit more, because the new building focuses, as far as contemporary art, more on Latin America, which is good because we have a huge Hispanic community here. But perhaps they will start investing in art, the modern art in Asia, because there's a lot of very political art in coming out of China, and I think it's important. It's a very important voice. So I hope to see more of that out of the MFAH when they keep building on their modern art collection.
Yeah, absolutely. I think they had two new artists, Aoki and Jennifer Linda Chuck.
Okay.
Have a
Oh
piece.
yes, I've seen Jennifer's work. I enjoy her work too. Yes, yes, I really do like her things. I know exactly what you're talking about. It's very whimsical and it's yeah, yes. Uh, there was a short film, and there's one room in the Kinder building that has shorts, video shorts. I think it's right behind the photography area. And the very last film in that list is a film by a Chinese video, I guess, movie maker or director named Cao Fei, and it's called Renminbi City or something. And it's just like this floating island of all these very iconic things. It's like, but instead of Tiananmen Square with Chairman Mao in the middle, it's like a panda in the middle or something. I don't quite remember, but there's this famous CCTV building that's dangling off a crane, and the whole thing is bobbling in the sea. And, there's like a statue of Mao, and yeah, it's animated. It's very exaggerated in many ways, cartoonish, but it's an interesting. It's all these icons that you would immediately recognize, but it's almost like a very commercial, intentionally commercial to make a statement about, I guess, materialism or whatever it is. I guess you could read it in many ways. But I mean, I would like to see more works like that, actually. So it's provocative.
Yeah, and also be not just about Asian American, but it's like Asian artists from Asia. That's also really interesting.
Yeah, that their work does not necessarily have to be a certain way.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mhm.
And do you have any thoughts on the patronage of arts and culture? That's
The patronage.
yeah,
You mean, okay, can be more specific. I'm not quite sure what you mean by that.
yeah, like kind of a diversity and patronage of the arts and culture scene. Uh,
Hmm.
Asian Americans.
Yeah, I have to say that Asian Americans, and I'm making a generalization, and I'm sorry if I'm doing that. But generally, they are not consumers of the arts. Generally, I have not seen huge numbers of Asian Americans in concert halls or at arts venues. I don't know. I mean, maybe we're just too busy with our lives in other areas um to really make that a thing. I'm not sure why. Or it's just not something that they choose to spend money on. I mean, the arts are expensive. I mean, to attend these events is expensive. And I still in general think like theater especially. I don't think Asian American families encourage their kids to be actors, for one thing. And the things that take well, classical music, yes, that the Asian American families always have their kids in orchestras and take piano lessons, but there's certain areas in the arts that they're not cultivating actively. But I mean, I suppose that is true for many other groups as well, and I think that's part of it is economics. Um, I'm not sure. I think parents tend to still want their kids to do something in their mind that's more quote unquote serious studies, and somehow the arts is still not a serious enough endeavor. um, but I mean, I do see more this generation of people my age, my generation of adults, at more being trying to be more involved. So, I mean, I hope that that continues. I hope to see more people that look at like me in audiences of things that I go to. You know, I would love to be able to share that with the Asian American community. I'm not quite sure how to do it. So it seems like a little bit, um, I don't know, it's not, I think they like to, I think I've seen Asian Americans at their own events. I think it's still kind of a, oh, I don't want to say insular, but
A bubble?
maybe it is. Like they will go to the folk orchestras. There's lots of organizations that put on, like there's a choral community of, I don't know if it's Taiwanese or a particular country, but it's, their concerts are well attended. I've been to some community events and where the whole audience is Asian, pretty much. But I haven't seen them kind of come out in big groups at operas or symphonies, for instance, you know. So, I mean, that's worth exploring, I guess. But I mean, there's just so many options out there. And if they just want to attend things within their own community, that's wonderful too. You know, I like to see more Americans going to those things. And I've actually had people ask me, "Oh, do you know where I can send my child to take pipa lessons or guzheng lessons?" That's a way of opening up the Asian um, folk music to the American world. So they're welcoming Americans into their folk orchestras, Chinese instrument orchestras. So the reverse can happen too. It would be nice to see a diverse audience at all events, you know, across the board.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, if from your just like opinion, how do you think that we can kind of blur this boundary between different culture, going to different music and
Hmm.
culture?
Well, it really just takes a few people who really want to make that happen to actually make that happen. I really believe that. I think it just takes a person from this organization, say the Chinese Youth Orchestra, to reach out to the Houston Symphony management. Say, we are interested in being part of your organization's activities, and maybe we can do some outreach both ways. And then maybe they can get together for a project for like the Chinese Lunar New Year concert or a Chinese dance group that I've seen, like beautiful folk dancing. There's all these schools in Chinatown that put on these beautiful shows for their own audience. But it doesn't even have to be a festival. It could be anything. The symphony is always in their education concerts. They could feature a group like that. It just, I mean, I think it just really takes the gumption to reach out and communicate. Um, of course, it has to be quality. That's part of it. But I think there is quality out there. I think there's definitely groups that should be on the stage in Jones Hall. That could be invited by another major organization. The symphony does their own outreach into these communities when pre-COVID, but in their summer concerts to these events. But I think if you had that cross involvement, it would definitely bring the patronage. The parents of these children who are in the dance troupes, they would take them more to the symphony concerts if they were invested in it. If it's, oh, my child actually performed with the Houston Symphony, you know, things like that. I think I don't know. I mean, those are small things maybe, but if you start thinking that way, I think it's just all about, that's how groups make projects happen, the smaller groups. And I think the bigger groups could take a page out of the smaller groups book and make things happen that way too. So it doesn't have to always be from top down, it could be from bottom up. Those are just my personal thoughts. I have no idea. I'm not in the management of things at all on the management side. So I have no idea how hard that is to make these things happen. I'm sure it is really difficult. And I'm sure you can't have your hand in everything and know everything about what's going on in the city and in these different communities. but it's really, I think it just takes individuals and groups that are interested and that are invested enough in that, in making that happen.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for sharing. I know that not all these questions are easy questions, and I put you on.
I'm just, I'm, who knows if I'm making any sense.
Thank you. Yeah. And how about the institutions behind, like the artists, for example? Like artists can be free to like express themselves, but institutions or curators and like they
Mm,
can kind of talk some
I know.
different
Yes,
ways.
well, I mean, I guess they have a criteria that they, and it's personal too. I mean, there's no way for that. Art is personal. You know, I'm not trying to say that museums and institutions have an agenda, but they're certainly aware of the current climate, you know, and I think they, in certain ways, they have to curate in a way that brings awareness to that. And there's nothing wrong with that. I don't think there's anything inherently wrong with curating in order, you know, whether it's for underrepresented groups or a particular theme or message that they would like to for people to be more thoughtful and aware of. That's kind of fulfills the mission of the institution in a way. If their mission is to be inclusive, then that is definitely something they're always considering, you know. I don't think we should be reactionary to the times, but I think we just need to be aware of the times we live in and try to make a positive contribution to the conversation. Not a divisive one, but just a you know, something to open up the conversation, which is, you know, always, it's important to, and people are going to react to art in unpredictable ways. It's not, there's not a set response to any of these things that we see, you know. It's not, and then artists, once the art is out there, it's not theirs necessarily anymore. It's not the, you cannot predict the response, you cannot control your art necessarily once it's out there. People are going to say what they're going to say, and people are going to all have their own opinions, you know. So artists are always vulnerable that way, because once it's out there, you have to let it go. It's belongs to the world, and it belongs to, and everybody can have an opinion on it, you know. So I mean, I don't see anything overtly so like that in today's art world. In fact, I think people are probably err on the side of being careful these days because they don't want to offend anybody. And I think art loses its ability to really make a meaningful difference if people are censoring themselves. Whether it's in, I mean, I think that's more true in literature, in the things that you write. People are more careful now to not say the wrong things. But you can, the individual arts and in theater for sure, that can definitely still happen. That kind of effect and influence that words can have, that visual images can have. So yeah, I mean, it's I mean, I'm trying to think of an example of a specific, actually this upcoming artist that I'm covering, Anna Meyer, for the Houston Contemporary Crafts Museum. She did a project that she started in 2008. She put all these, the clay tablets with written words on them out in the Southern California in the forests, random locations, I guess. I haven't read specifically, but now 10 years later, more than 10 years later, 6 of those tablets have naturally been fired by natural fires, by these pretty much disasters we've been having out west with these wildfires, right? So, you know, so when I talk to her, I'm going to ask her about, you know, her art is definitely making a statement. It's an environmental statement. I don't know if she, what her intentions were, you know, I mean, often artists' intentions and then the interpretation by the audience, it's open to different interpretations. But for sure, there's an environmental message in there. So what is an artist's intent in setting those tablets out there? And did she predict that there would be wildfires that would make them fire naturally? And what is that? What is she trying to say with that? You know? So yeah, I guess that's just a small example of what an artist can say and how he is saying it through their art.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. And I'm so excited to see the article coming out and continue.
Yeah. That's the end of January or early February, because that exhibit goes out January 31st at the, that's a gem of a museum too. So there's just so much in Houston. It's really amazing. You just have to go out there and see it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess that's all of my questions. Do you have anything
Okay.
to add?
No, I'm good. I just hope everybody stays healthy and that we get this vaccine, and then I don't know how long it's going to take for the live performances to come back. I'm assuming it probably won't be until the following fall at the earliest. And but it will be back. It will be different. I think we've been on such a long hiatus that people have gotten used to a certain thing. So it will not be just like snap of the finger. You know, there's going to be still a lot of challenges ahead. So we'll just try to keep going because life is, you know, richer with the arts for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.